Hi everyone, we are back with the second episode. Dance is bullshit. And for this second episode, we decided to watch Crystal Pite's work, Beethoven. It's been uploaded in Market TV, and yeah, if you have the chance, have a look on that piece because it's one of my top pieces I've ever seen. So I really recommend it. During this podcast, we are going to be talking in depth about many aspects of the piece, but I just wanted to give this little video introduction in which I speak about who is in this piece, in case we forgot to mention during the podcast. I think it's better if I have it here said. And also it's going to be written under the video if you want to have a look, having as well the link to the actual video streaming. And so yeah, this piece was created by Crystal Pite and Jonathon Young. It was premiered in July the 23rd 2015 in Toronto, Canada. And this piece has theater as well as dance choreography. So it was written by Jonathon Young, the actual performer in the piece, and choreographed and directed by Crystal Pite. The performers for this piece were Bryan Arias from 2015 until 2017. This is one of the versions we are going to see with him on stage. And from 2018, Christopher Hernandez took his spot, followed by David Raymond, Cindy Salgado, Jermaine Spivey, Tiffany Tregarthen, and Jonathon Young. As I said before, that he's going to be joining the other performance on stage. For the composition and sound design, it's Owen Belton, Alessandro Juliani, and Meg Rowe. Set design, Gower Taylor. Costume design, Nancy Bryant. Lighting design, Tom Visser. Rehearsal direction, Beauchesne. And additional choreography. In this piece we are gonna talk about what means additional choreography. Bryan Arias and Cindy Salgado for salsa, and David Raymond as tap. Yeah, just to say, I would recommend you guys to watch the piece before to watch the podcast, because spoiler alert is gonna be coming up every time. But anyways, I think you can enjoy the podcast even without seeing the piece, because we, as always, we don't only talk about the piece itself, we diverge into what's the dance and how do we see our culture. Well, that's it. Today was longer. I hope you enjoyed. I leave you with the guys. Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and also because the balance, maybe some people's microphones are slightly louder, so if I accidentally butt into someone or
Yeah.
But
hey buddy.
So guys,
Alright, start us off, Miguel.
second podcast. Do you feel the success already?
After considering at the moment we haven't even released the first one, I feel so good.
Why did you say it? I was gonna say like 100,000 views first episode. Oh my god, this is getting crazy. Okay, yeah, no, we didn't even release it. We are recording it before releasing.
We will have 4 views at least, the 4 of us. So
Definitely.
Maybe 5.
My mom is watching. My girlfriend is watching. There's gonna be like 10 at least around there.
Yeah, that's true.
We just have to put a K around beside it. This week, Beethoven, Crystal Pite and Jonathon Young. Yeah, how was it? Okay, good. We end the podcast here. It was great, this second episode.
Wait.
Direct.
Before I was gonna say like that without Vaseline or anything.
Yeah, I never know how to start, so let's just start. How was it for you guys? When did you watch it? Today? No, yesterday. You were saying, Malcolm, you watched.
Yeah, I stayed up late last night watching it, and therefore a bit. Nevertheless, yeah, I mean, I guess the point was I needed to stay up and think about it a bit and digest and make some notes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for me, it was the second time I saw the piece, and both times on video. I haven't seen the piece live, and I have to say I enjoyed the piece or got more out of the piece, even more watching it for the second time due to the amount of depth and levels of information that the piece is giving the viewer, and I took in much more the second time. I guess like when you're watching a piece, it's also like I don't know, you always wonder what's happening, you know, and so many things to watch, like trying to make meaning out of all the different characters. Like, of course, you've got the main character, but then trying to make sense. Are the other dancers? Are they all just part of one subconscious mind? Are they all representing like different parts of the subconscious, or etc. etc. So I think it was just easier to be more at peace and just enjoy it a bit more watching it the second time. I'd say, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw it for the second time also now, and the second time was the first time in video. I got to see it live with Saul. Maybe you can also give a bit your opinion on it. But yeah, watching it a second time, I was able to understand better because the piece is definitely not easy to understand. It's really dramaturgy wise, it's really well done. It gets you through a trip that you will understand and you will have connections with uh, characters and ideas from those characters, but it's definitely a piece that takes a little bit of thought and understanding to get it. And yeah, especially if you are not if English is not your first language, you can miss a keyword that it's really important for the piece. This time was better for me. The other time, I still, when I watched it live, I still loved it and I still understood. And it was, I was not just lost in the dance. I was following the dramaturgy. But yeah, this time it was clearer somehow by watching it on TV and so. So yeah, good to watch it a second time, and I would watch it a third and a fourth. It's just amazing. Saulillo, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, the first time I watched it, I came out of the theater uh, somewhat of a state of shock. I was
How appropriate
really.
for the piece.
What?
How appropriate for the piece.
I know, right? Yeah, no, I don't know. It was really, it really did touch on somehow that piece for me. You know, it was the first and only time I had seen it until now that I watched it in video again. And yeah, it it took me a while to be able to start processing all the information and all that I had seen and all that just happened in front of my eyes on that stage now. And I remember you guys were talking about it already, and I was completely out somehow. I was really um, impressed by the whole piece, how well, uh, yeah, how well structured it is, and how well created it is, choreographic, but also the dramaturgic point, everything, every single thing, every single piece of that mechanism that is that show works perfectly like clockwork for me. And then, yeah, I said already at that time that it was my favorite show, or at least, if not my favorite show, most one of my favorites. Uh, because it's so deep. It's so not the message, not only the message, but I mean deep in work. You see layers and layers and layers of work in that show, and how much thought there is behind what's happening on stage. Yeah, I was totally blown away by it. And watching it again a second time is what you guys said. Helped me also to understand it a bit better. Although I sort of did understand a lot in the first time already. And and yeah, it was great to watch it again.
Max, you also saw it live, right? Before to watch it in TV.
Yes, my second viewing as well. I watched it the first time in Zurich. Yeah. So yeah, as it's my second viewing, I took away also a lot more the second time, but not because the first time was lacking or anything. The first time I saw it, I really enjoyed it, but it was not my favorite piece in the world. I thought it was amazing, but it somehow, because I'd seen many pieces from Crystal at this point over 10 years, I think I was a bit taking some things for granted that have become so commonplace in her work, or also because she's much more mainstream and much more known now, that you see in all the other work she makes for other companies, and then all the people that try to emulate her vocabulary also. So I think I took some of that for granted the first time I saw it, but I could never deny how much quality is in that piece. And there was definitely a certain amount of jealousy about watching a piece that is so well crafted, so masterfully crafted. But the second time, I took a lot more appreciation for the whole thing, in like I really enjoyed it instead of like wondering if I'd ever make anything as good as this. I was really enjoying watching the piece yesterday. I sat down like with dinner, but like threw my phone somewhere else, turned off all the lights, and like did like the whole intermission thing. Took a break when there was a break, and didn't take any other breaks. So like I tried to watch it like it's really the show that I had seen on stage as much as I could in a screen setting. And yeah, like especially the text, which I know you guys said like as non-native English speakers might be the difficult, and I can totally understand that, but I'll speak as someone who doesn't have this handicap, and it's like the text the first time was clever, and the second time gets even more clever, and it's yeah.
Completely agree with that. Completely.
I really the second time was somehow better. I don't know how. It's on video, and somehow the second time was better. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that that's why with the text I was thinking also that the first time I got it, I understood it, and it made me feel things. But on this second time, I was with this knowledge of what the story was about, and having already an idea of what was going to happen, that I could go deeper into the text and have me shocked in a different level, in the intellectual level, let's say. In this second time, you go in, yeah, you can go deeper because you know what's gonna happen more or less. Even though we watched the Saul, when was this? 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
I think so. I think it was 2017,
Could be. Oh wait, yes.
or if not 16.
Yeah, it was 17, 17 because I have still the program here, and yeah, it was 2017, and I still remember because same as Saul, I felt like it was an amazing piece, and was shocked afterwards. I remember myself laughing and crying during the show. That this is when I'm fully engaged on a show. We were talking the last podcast about um, us not giving our opinion from just an audience point and feeling a bit more uh, judgmental with the things because we are more analytical and we know how things work. This time I couldn't be anything like that. I was just grabbed by the show and being fully exposed during the whole show. So one of these shows is the ones that I just love to watch dance because of these shows.
It was definitely, like, after I watched it, one of the first things. I mean, maybe it has to do with the fact that all four of us have performed a work of hers and learned a bit how she functions mentally. But I mean, this is on a whole other level. But after I watched it, I was like, and I think it has nothing to do with the quarantine. It just made me be like, damn, I want to move. I want to dance a bit, you know, like I want to deconstruct, I want to reconstruct, I want to break apart and create new coordinations, and it was a very primal excitement. It had nothing to do with like a need to create things. It was just like, oh man, imagine making like this and then making this and then breaking that open and then moving this part, and oh, that sounds so fucking fun.
Yes. No, I hear you totally. I felt the same, and it's not because of the quarantine or confinement. It's not because of that.
Yeah. But what's funny is for me, like the first time I saw it, like I said, like the movement vocabulary, movement quality, of course, was impressive, but I didn't walk away remembering much of it for some reason. And I was not so, because Crystal usually does this like split show thing where a beginning is oftentimes very theatrical with movement theater, and the second half is very deconstructed movement only. And when I watched the first time, I remember not really remembering much of the deconstructed movement the second half because I was so taken in by the first half that the second half was not as impactful. But this time I felt like there was a much more balance, and I really walked away with certain scenes really stuck in my head and certain moments, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have to say I like better. I mean, for me, even though it was really well filmed and edited, and because many times what happens with choreographies or shows that are made for stage, when they get filmed, if they don't get filmed by someone that knows about the show and that has seen the show enough times to see, okay, now it's a where I can put a close up. Now it's a where I need to open the whole and go to the whole stage. You know, you can lose many things. The the whole piece can even get destroyed. You know.
Yeah.
So this was not the case. Absolutely not. It was really well done. But still, for me, the stage version was delivering much better feelings, or I mean, I could tell that it was envisioned as a stage piece, and it was really well envisioned for that matter. And on stage, it worked perfect. Whereas on the video, the fact of, especially in the first part, when he's alone talking, there were many close-ups and there were many angle changes. It sort of distracted me. It sort of not distracted me, but it made it less genuine somehow, or real, or I couldn't connect as much as I did or sitting on the chair on the stage. I mean, in front of the stage.
Well, I guess
But
yeah, sorry.
no, but this to say that watching it in video, the second part really, really, really worked also. So I had more of a problem with the first part, especially when he's alone or when he's, when the camera changes the angle, roll from close up to opening to close up again. That didn't happen so much in the second part. Yeah, it was for me better, in delivering the message and the ambience of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess also, I mean, I haven't seen it live, so I can't really say, but I can just also imagine that because the actual space itself on stage plays such a prominent role, like the room, the feeling of the room, the sort of warehouse plays such a prominent role in the actual piece. Like the whole idea is kind of centered around this room. That losing that through video must also play a huge role in losing in something in the work, no?
Yeah, exactly. That room, that stage, that set, it's a character on it.
Yeah.
It's another character in the show.
For me, I agree, but kind of in the opposite direction. Like the first section, I felt mostly really well filmed for my sensibility. Like I was remembered that's kind of what I was watching in the live show. Exactly how.
I mean, yeah, it's really well filmed. It's not about that.
Yeah, but no. But what I'm agreeing is that that in a technical way, I could see everything so well, but there's simply something atmospheric that gets lost from watching it in video. Well, this is, I mean, expected, but like Malcolm said, with the warehouse atmosphere being so important, but it's like I could get into it watching in the film, but then there's so many moments where the atmosphere breaks, the atmosphere changes, and it gets interrupted by something external or a third party, where like there's such a hard cut between the room and then when the female clown would come in with the box. Like it looks like it's made to look like two different worlds, And this shift is a bit less effective in video, or when the backstage wall comes in where it's supposed to look like you're behind the. I remember being like a little bit annoyed because it's such awkward placement in the live version, but that was part of my experience that I think was very important. And in this video, I felt like it played like a very non meta role, even though it's obviously so meta. I don't know. It was not as impactful for me in those moments where the atmosphere has to shift. The shifts were not as effective because the camera can only take in and watch from so many perspectives.
I was thinking on that way also, that somehow with the video you are told what to watch, like what to see on that specific moment, what to focus on, and when you are on stage, you can focus on something that might not be as important as the face of the actor, but to you makes more sense to see. Like for example, something that for sure was missing on a video because it's impossible to capture are the moments when you see the shadow of the dancers moving and you cannot tell really well on the video, and on stage you can really tell because we need to spend a few moments talking about the light design of this piece because it's just out of this world. There is just from minute zero how it starts, it's just it's perfect. It's already perfect.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw an interview with her when this piece was being made, or shortly after the premiere, and I believe that they spent I don't remember exactly how long, but they definitely spent a portion of the creation process in the theater itself. So
Just
that
with
obviously,
lights.
yeah, and in order to facilitate the use of lights as part of the actual design of the work, or in part of the creation process, rather than bringing it in towards the end, and that really shows in a good way.
I remember
Yeah.
hearing about that, especially
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say one scene that was really not. Even if it was a different experience for you in video versus stage, there was one scene that just was not as good on video. Is the scene with the strobing lights where he's running and he's saying, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god." This scene is amazing live, and you just like so many dots start to connect on what he's thinking about. That this is the trauma that he went through, and this atmosphere is presented so well with the lighting. In the video, it was just a bit difficult for me. This was the one moment where I was like, I remember, I know this scene is amazing because I remember it being amazing, but if I had just seen it like this, I'd take away the same because it was just not as effective. I mean, it's super hard. It's just one light source with one person moving in front. It's really difficult to capture that in video compared to stage. But this was one scene that I was a bit like, dang, I wish I could see that live.
Yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say too, that it must have been a big challenge for the filming crew to not only film this show but to edit it afterwards. They did an amazing job, but yeah, it's not an easy one neither.
Yeah, I mean,
especially in that scene, you can.
Yeah, I mean, usually the lights from pieces from crystal have a lot of dark spots or watching, but not having the typical dense side lights in which you see perfectly the shape of the body. You maybe just see the dancer with the light behind them. So it must be really hard to record this with a good quality of image and video on it, because I mean, if you see my videos when I try to do lights like that, they are awful. So yeah, well done, guys. It was amazing.
I think one thing to say that I really appreciate about the lights is this. I mean, this piece is funny and it's sad and it's heartbreaking. But many of these atmospheres, it's easy to say it's a very dreary atmosphere. You know, there's this feeling that you're in like the homeless guy in the subway station kind of feeling.
Yes.
But somehow there's so many scenes that are all different, that are all dreary, and that are all lit differently, which I find very impressive. I mean, both from a dramaturgical aspect, but just from a lighting design perspective, that so many scenes can feel like this empty, gray, mold on the walls, rain dripping in the pipes. But there's so many different versions of it every time, and they don't feel repetitive to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would love to spend a bit more time studying these lights, because I think it would be an amazing study to make if you're interested in light design. Because yeah, what you say, and also the creating atmospheres that are always on the same piece, that it's not all of a sudden we are changing piece and we are becoming a completely different show because the lights need to change, so we cannot have the same atmosphere. But also the fact in the beginning this shows already that uh, lights are used almost as characters, and without the almost using the voice record at the same time as the light, and having each light for one performer. It's just great how it's uplifting the dramaturgy of the whole piece. It's making the everything make sense. And for sure, at the beginning, the first time you watch it, it's not gonna make sense yet. But during the piece, you keep understanding that there are characters and that there are that they speak and they are all in the head of the main character, but they are separated from each other at the same time. It's
It
just
reminded me of that Pixar movie, Inside Out.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
And also I wanted to say like because the pieces you say like it's funny, but somehow on this second time I maybe it's because of the mood I am in, or yeah, I don't know exactly why. I was going to the second layer behind the funny, and the second layer behind the funny, it's really dark. Of course, the piece has dark humor. It's basically what it's working on during the piece. But to me, just the dark side was too present this time as to for me to laugh or to really I was enjoying, but not in a entertainment laughing way, but in the way of oh my god, this guy is gonna lose his head. He's completely gone. He's getting crazy and he needs help. And yeah, I was completely empathic
Oh,
on
really?
this side. Yeah.
Even when you see the Jermaine guy in his pink costume with the feathers coming out.
Even man, even that moment, because of course it's
Okay.
just hilarious. But at the same time, I was thinking like he wants this show to happen and he cannot make it happen. And I am still some words are resonating from before, like still on my head because yeah, it's so well done. The piece, the text is so good that you can have 3 scenes later something hit you from before, like
Hmm.
a text that was in the scene 2, it's gonna hit you in scene 5 because it's making it represent that way.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is super impressive. Like that. There's a sense that they plant a trap in your mind 4 scenes before with like the. Let's hope that people listening have seen the piece and then watch this. The back up joke during the show. You're my backup. No, back up.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
funny. This is funny in the context of the show, but then when he has the doll, he says, "I'm going to pick you back up."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what the fuck? What? What? Where did this come from? What? Like I didn't. Just completely different, but yet so important and so, and it's so connected to the idea of supporting or trying to do it yourself, and yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe we can talk about the theme of the show, the what it's about. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know how to start.
yeah, I can try, but you guys are gonna need to help me because even understanding. I mean, if someone has seen the piece while watching this podcast, is gonna understand why it's difficult to explain what's the piece about.
maybe
I'm gonna try.
maybe we should put the context of Jonathan's personal history into
Mm,
this show.
go for it.
I mean, so Jonathan, who is the main character of the show, before the show, lost his daughter and his niece and his nephew in a fire accident. Um, and yeah, can not imagine the trauma that he went through afterwards. And this is, I'm sure, personally fueling what this piece is about. There's often, many times mentioned a her, and a him, which are the three victims from the fire. And that they are not here anymore, that we cannot see them anymore. And even though the show does a very good job to generalize, let's say, so that the audience's experience is not forced to be Jonathan's experience, it's obviously coming from this. And so, well, if I want to explain the piece, it's that the fallout of a person's psyche after facing trauma, how you fall apart, what you do to try and recover, what you shouldn't do to try and recover, what is recovery, is there a way to recover. It discusses the idea of using. They don't mention a drug, but I would assume that it is a drug or something related to some form of personal escape that is an addiction that prevents you from facing your trauma or accepting the trauma, or even after you accept the trauma, you think there's nowhere to go, so that the only way to do is to use and restart the show again.
I mean, there's one line where he says literally something like "sorry for getting high" or something getting high, or I got high. So
on the phone call.
Yeah,
It's like,
during the phone call with the mom. That's another scene where it could be funny, and it's funny. People laugh about it, but it's so freaking dark.
Yeah, you can see how uncomfortable he is, like his whole body language when he's on the phone and his facial, like it's really
This scene is heartbreaking. Like he's just being himself, and even then it's entering into the Inquisition from his mother. You know, like like, no, I'm on the ground. What do you mean, am I high? You know,
what do you mean? What am I on? I'm
right.
on
the ground.
Exactly.
Am I on something?
And actually, he was on top of the female clown. Ironically, no.
She was on him.
No, she was on the. Oh, she was on him. Right.
She was on him. Yeah.
I
mean, definitely heartbreaking. That's what you did really well on saying heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking because of all this. That he himself went through a big trauma like this. Plus, then he's the one co-creating the piece. He created all of the text together with Crystal. They built up a whole script and a whole line to work on. They created.
And to finish a bit with what's the piece about, this has a huge play on the piece, but then there is a second view that you can have from the piece that is just an entertainer, a host trying to make a show run, and this connects to the perfection with this trauma that we have been talking about, someone losing his psychic, and it's all so well connected that you could literally not talk about this second part that I just spoke, and you will still be talking about what's the piece about. Just having this extra part in which there's just a host trying to make a show run, having his muses appear on his head, and having many different ways of dancing. That's the way it represents like different ideas, or having all that mixed together. It's what could make this piece so difficult that it was not possible to achieve, but they did it. They achieved it with the text, with the music, with the lights, with the dance. Everything is making the show make sense.
I just wanted to back up 1 second. Just to jump on what Max and Hill were saying, but about the his own personal experience, and that's how the piece was made, and that's the center point. But at the same time, although it definitely makes it more heartbreaking to know that, I think it's not it's not one of those things where you necessarily need to know that before you watch the show, which is what makes it so. It's just so well done in the sense that it's so well neutralized. And like, I don't know, I just feel like those kind of shows can have such a danger of becoming very self-indulgent and very like over dramatized. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Am I speaking English or what?
Over.
You know, because it's about his own personal experience, but it's the way the text is written and the way everything is done. It's just so, it's done with such good taste that you're not like, I don't know, when it becomes too much, you're not, you know, you kind of like go a bit backwards as an audience, but it's just like the right amount of like information and like, you know, you don't see some guy just say that. You able to like empathize much more the way it's made, let's say.
Yeah. I like when I saw it the first time, I read in the program about Jonathan's personal experience after, I believe. But the first time watching, I do remember how related, I mean, not in a one-to-one parallel comparison, but the struggle of my own addictions. Not doesn't have to be a hard drug, but the idea that there are things that you want to break about yourself, or habits you have, or things you don't want to accept, things you want to change. I mean, like for me, I have problem with like binge video gaming or pornography, and this is watching this show and seeing his on-stage justifications for why he wanted to use again, how it made him feel to use again, how it changes your perspective when you're using versus when you are contemplating using versus when you feel you've recovered, when you feel it's not working, when you feel it is working, and how narrow the tightrope is where you feel in control of yourself and of your life. I very much felt this, even if it's not about a trauma or even if it's not about an actual substance. I did feel this like immediate relationship with my own addictive elements in my life, and I thought it was, like Mel said, this amount of neutrality, or I don't know what the right word is because it doesn't neutralize the show in a atmospheric sense, but it's not generalizing because that makes it seem like it's a kind of like fluff, but this ability to,
it like dilutes it somehow, I guess maybe that's a good word, like in a sense of like doesn't make that the overpowering thing about his own personal experience somehow.
Because the work is very specific. It's not about some vague topic, but it manages to still be accessible.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to add something on what's the piece about, beside the things we said. I think that says it more or less.
I
There
would
is a synopsis there. Say.
I also just want to ask you guys what you think the show represents.
You mean the show, like the whole thing? Or
Sorry,
the
show the show within the show. Sorry, I should have been more specific about
the meta
the
show.
show,
The meta
the
show.
show aspect of the show.
Are you a show?
I was just curious what you thought that meant.
I'll go. No, okay, sorry, go ahead, Lydia.
No, sorry. No, I was thinking that maybe I'm thinking of myself of someone that takes it very simple, but it can be taken the way I was thinking, especially on the first time. That is, it represents literally him trying to create something. And maybe it's what Max was saying, that I feel represented on the piece, which is something amazing. But trying to accept all the voices on his head, saying on which way a show should go, and how, I mean, I'm taking it in a very literal way. Like if I take the character on the show, I I would see perfectly the actor that is not the character having those thoughts on his head when he's trying to make one piece. It doesn't need to be this one. It doesn't need to be this show, but any other. And having all these conversations on your own head, trying to go one way, the other, conflicting with yourself, and feeling worthless because the ideas don't come together, and all of that. I don't know. I really feel connected the piece to creating a show. Creating, it doesn't even need to be a
Okay.
show. Creating a
Mhm.
piece of art. Saulillo, you were gonna say?
Yeah, it's a bit difficult to, I don't know, to give that specific part a specific. For me, it represented one of the demons he had character. These demons were represented by the dancers, characters of the show, but about, but also by the room that he's talking about. That is represented um, by the set, and that that scene in which he is hosting a show or he represents to me one of these demons that is like it's not represented by a human figure, but by a happening thing that's happening, which is a show, no? And that represents that it's something that he used to do, or he used to be there in that situation. Now he can be in that situation the same way he used to be before, because this trauma, this this trauma that he's carrying because of the things that happened to him are not letting be the, or they changed him so much that he cannot be he cannot do things the way he used to do. Something hard to explain. Like for example,
Yeah.
if I take it not only from the character that Jonas is playing, but if I imagine what Jonathan went through, him as actor and artist of the from the drama side, I imagine that after such an event and such a trauma, you cannot really perform the same way you used to. And maybe you're not even up for doing certain things you did before in an even comfortable way.
I
Maybe
think.
this
Oh,
show
sorry.
represents
No.
that.
I think for me, no. I agree. I like one of the things Saul said about like the other people represent a sort of demon about him. But for me, the show is for me the deepest point of his, or one of the deepest points of his trip. I mean, aside from the fact that it's gaudy and extravagant, it is the scene where he feels the most loved in relation to other people, whether it's to the audience, which he's talking to directly, or with the other people, with Jermaine especially, who is his double. They all care about him and want to interact with him in a way that he feels supported. And I think this, for me, the show is the greatest illusion of him feeling supported, is that he can only feel this way when he is on this substance. That he says, I should never have left. I should never have stopped trying to take this drug, because this drug, you and me, this performance, when I'm at the deepest point of my high and I'm with you, we got something special. I should never have left this. This is, like sounds like something that really is like someone who's indulging in something for the first time in a long time, and he realizes how much he never wanted to stop indulging himself.
Yeah.
And
This is yeah.
and and in a way, I think it's the most. I mean, a lot of the first half centers around this show because once the show happens, then all the other people have this thing about where he needs to be going back on stage and singing again. He needs to get back on the show. What is he doing? And to me, I don't know what is intended or what other people thought, but especially now the second time through, first time I was just so much information. I didn't know how to take it. But watching it this time, I really saw it like when he reaches that point where he can't do anything, sing or dance or anything, like almost as if the brain is in some like catatonic state and he has no response. Like he doesn't even have brain response. He's barely alive to me. This is what I felt. And all the other people are different parts of his mind saying like, okay, well then how do we continue this show? Not in the sense of a show people are watching, but this the only way that I can feel good again. How do I get back in there? How do I get back in there? Okay, you have to give him a sedative. You have to dose him again. Even in a situation where he's so down, he's so destroyed physically and mentally and health wise, the only way that part of his mind thinks the only option is to just take the drug again. And this is Bryan's character in the recording.
Mm.
And it's such an aggressive and disturbing way to say like, okay, well, this is the only way that I know how to survive is to just go back on the substance again. And for me, the show is just a representation of his farthest escape from facing his biggest problems.
Mm.
It reminded me a little bit of Requiem for a Dream, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The grandmother's
Yeah.
scenes with the TV.
Mrs. Goldfarb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Max,
Yeah.
now that you mentioned Bryan, that is one of the dancers, I think we can talk a bit about the movement quality on this show. The movement quality, I mean the excellence on the quality that the choreography has. Talking about movement, because we have been talking a lot about dramaturgy, lights, the piece itself, how well it's is meshing one scene with the other, but the movement quality is impressive. The performance from those dancers is impressive, and something I was talking when I saw it with Yaita, with my girlfriend, and that something that surprised me a lot when I saw it live was that there was not a stumble, there was no a step that they were taking easy. I didn't feel that at all watching. And some of the things they do are technically very hard to do. And so this just, of course, just makes me think on how much time they spent working on this, because for sure they are amazing as dancers. They are very talented as dancers, but still you need to put your best. You need to work your hardest to get to this quality of dancing.
I mean, and that's probably why they are that good dancers, because they have worked their butts off, you know. But yeah, I mean. Anyway.
Sorry.
Yeah, they are. If there is something close to being a movement nerd, I think they would be movement nerds, you know. They would be that. They are researching, research, and research. A while ago, quite long while ago, I I read a post or a text that Jermaine wrote about how a dancer should, um, should to be in order to be good or remarkable or whatever. In order to be successful, a dancer needs to recycle themselves, if you will, to know more and more, or needs to get as much knowledge as possible in terms of movement techniques or different movement methods, body condition, any kind of way that helps you to get to know your body first, to get to know how to use it in different ways. And it was really, really, really interesting to read that. I couldn't agree more. And I could totally see that in his dancing. You see the way he uses his body, he has so much knowledge about it and about how can he use it, that that's the way you can do the things that he can do, you know. He is amazing. All of them are from the little background we have, their work. We know the way they work, and we know it's hours and hours and hours in researching every single detail of every single move. How to make it more efficient, how to make it look better, how to make it more efficient, not only mechanically, but for the audience to see what you need them to see, what you want them to see. We could talk about this in hours now.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with your statements more either. Like, I mean, I think all of us remember from our time working with Eric, who came to set Crystal's work and was the ballet, the rehearsal director for Beauchesne.
Mm.
Like how much, and this was only for a 25-minute piece that we did with Crystals, like how much destroying you have to do of the material so that you can destroy what you think it's supposed to look like and actually do what it's actually supposed to be. It's not about making it look like what it's supposed to look like, but breaking down the mechanism, construct it properly, and it will formulate itself to be correct in the way that it's supposed to be made. And to do a creation in that way, it adds a whole different thing, I'm sure, and knowing how skilled each of them are, and then knowing that it requires this. It's not even gumption or initiative from the dancer. I think this is this kind of thing should be unspoken agreement. It should be expected of a dancer to be working with her at that level and what they're trying to do. I think these things go without saying. But then to put all of that together, I've always wondered what the creation process for one of her works for Kid Pivot are like, because of course working as a guest choreographer somewhere, it's a couple weeks and you do something, but to make the work on the dancers that you chose for a specific work that can be presented in the way you want to present it in your own frame, it must be such a interesting and exceptional and unique environment to create in.
Yeah.
I mean,
I,
sorry, Michael, just 1 second.
yeah, of
To
course.
talk about exactly that, I mean, in the piece, for the people that haven't seen it, there are a few sections in which they dance tap dance and they dance salsa. And actually, the dancers themselves choreographed that because they were dancers from salsa, or they knew salsa before, or they knew tap dance before. So definitely there is from Crystal's idea and from Jonathon's idea, there has to be a way in which they went with the dancers, because I'm sure they didn't choose dancers because they could do salsa, and also they were amazing contemporary dancers, because Bryan has done other pieces with Crystal, for example. So I think they just spoke and found something that was related to the dancers that they could, yeah, make a section of the show. And connecting to that, for sure, it's happening the same when they make just the contemporary research of movement itself. For sure, there is a conversation among dancer choreographer in which you find your best movement and your best energy and your best quality as a dancer, I mean, by saying what you can give, and by the choreographer understanding who you are as a dancer and what you can deliver best. That oftentimes we find that choreographers don't do that at all, and they just want to implement their own idea. And yeah, sorry, that's it. I didn't want to miss that part to say.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to talk about, actually. I wanted to talk about that because, of course, it's very easy to appreciate and enjoy, especially the second acts and all the contemporary dance, because that's all of our background. But how convincingly done was the tap and salsa sections? I don't know. It looked, I mean, of course, I don't have any or very little knowledge about those genres of dance, but for me, it just looked so, yeah, so convincingly done. The how well they executed it. And I saw also at the end it was choreographed by the dancers, and I had presumed that when I was watching it that they had helped out with these scenes, but that's only one of them. I don't think all of them had equal knowledge of how to do tap dance. And it was just, I don't know, it was especially the tap for me was such an interesting idea, like so out of the box, such an out of the box idea that was done so well, and just, I don't know, created a really interesting tension somehow. And yeah, I just don't know how they could perform it that well without practicing ridiculous amount of time. I don't know.
Also, because it was presented, because tap dance, I'm also for sure not an expert on it, but the way I've seen presented the tap dance usually is joyful and funny, and yeah, there are silly stories going on during the tap dance, and this time it was used specifically on a very dark moment where everything was going darker. He was starting to lose it, to lose his mind, the main actor. So it was used in a very different way than what we are, yeah, used to watch. That's what made it more interesting even for me.
Yeah, there's like a definite sinisterness about the tap, about the sound of the clacking,
Yeah.
and I think it's interesting, like what you say, Miguel, that there's a certain joy. I wouldn't use the same word. I would say that tap often has a certain virtuosity about it that is its main factor. But in the show, like, even though the tap is very impressive, I'm going to be taking the wrong way the way I'm going to say this. Even though the tap is taken is amazing and everybody does it convincingly well, it's for the purpose of the greater arc of the story, and that's why it works so well. It's not because there's a good tap scene. It's because the tap scene represents something. That tap scene is a harbinger for what is going to happen, or just the way that, I think his name is David, was the main tap dancer.
The main tap, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. The way he like just tap dances out while moving his elbows, like creeping out the door, like this says something. It's not about the tap. The tap is the vehicle to say something, and this is super. I mean, for me, in dance in general, this is a bit of a zoom out of this, but like in dance in general, it's not about how good the dancing is. It's what is it a vehicle for something transcending the vehicle itself? I thought that sounds so fake deep, but I think I got
Just
No, but it's definitely about how it is delivered and what it delivers. No, it's not only, of course, this eternal conversation about technique and how technique is only a vehicle, not you don't want to see technique on stage, class to improve and to whatever, but not the stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a vehicle, but the way they use it also is flawless. Or is really, really, and what Malcolm was saying, you know, that the apparent guy that knew, you know, that choreographed the tap, for example, was one of them, was not all of them. So even though I mean, I dare say in the States, formation for dancers is a bit more interdisciplinary. There's a bit more um, tap, for example, is quite accessible for students in the US. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a few people I know that studied in Juilliard, for example, they know how to tap too, and I don't know.
I mean, I don't know about tap specifically, but I guess there's, at least in a lot of dance education, you take ballet, jazz, modern, tap, character, a lot of different stuff because many schools offer many different things, and even some like really formal education programs force you to take different kinds of dance classes, even
Exactly.
if they're not like in vogue or even sharing the same spheres of career choice.
Yeah.
They do have quite a mix.
Yeah, even though it's not what you end up doing, no, but it's something that you touch and you can see that too, no? I guess they rehearsed like crazy too, because they
They must have
were,
done, no?
yeah, it was really complicated and they were so together, they looked as
Exactly.
one.
Can we?
But still, I think
It's
they still did have a bit of
I'm sure.
yeah.
free formation.
It's so exposing though, no? Like, because there's no other music in a lot of the tap moments, and it's like, as I say, the rhythms are fairly complex.
Yes,
And
they're
yeah,
very.
any wrong move or sound is gonna ruin the whole atmosphere. So I just found it amazing how well it was done.
Can we segue this into talking about? I know that we
Tap
already
dance.
talked about it, not about top dance, and it's kind of a repetition, but how amazing Jonathan is!
Yeah, we need
Like
to talk
Yeah.
about that.
my mind is like just blown at all the things he does in this show. He
Mm.
acts. He does like the self-recording message and then fills in the blanks as the opposite.
Yeah.
That scene is too much. That scene is
That's
way too much.
insane.
Yeah,
He
that's
It's
like
sings.
insane.
He does contemporary dance. He he talks to himself. I mean, I guess this is maybe routine for what's expected of an actor, but for me, this is amazing. He taps. Like I don't.
He does like show dance kind of stuff as well.
I'm sure he was also.
Mm.
Like the camera guy for the video, and I'm sure he did the lights. I think I saw him
Wrote the
selling
program.
the program. He was selling tickets, I think, at one of the shows. He was an usher. He was also an audience member. I saw once.
Sold the costumes himself.
yeah. I mean,
No,
I'm really happy that you brought this up because we needed to talk about it because I think every time the two times I've seen the piece, when I speak to someone about the piece, we end up spending a long time talking about Jonathon. Like how because the thing is that we were talking before about the quality of the dancers. Incredible, excellent. So now to bring someone that is not working usually in that way, dancing, just using their body to dance and to perform in a contemporary movement, to be at that level, the way Jonathon worked, I don't know how much. And to be on a scene with a dancer as great as Jermaine, that is probably one of the best dancers I've ever seen, and to be beside him and you don't mind looking at one or the other.
Mhm.
From us, that we are, let's say, I don't want to be cocky, but
Critical.
experts. But
We are critical.
yeah, we are critical to dance, and so for the dance community to accept the movements of an actor in such a complex material, he just, I don't know how much he worked for this, but thank you. We cannot say much more than that.
Yeah. So yeah, that is what I would like to say. Thank you.
It's amazing. The first time I saw the show, I don't know if you remember, Miguel. I said that I totally thought he was a dancer, like a dancer that somehow, like, after getting older, to dancers don't dance for so long. So he sort of redirected his career or something. I really didn't know about him.
Yeah, I
go-
was just also thinking about, though, I mean, of the amount of trust that Crystal Pite must have placed in him to actually take that larger role as a dancer as well. I don't know if that was in place from the beginning, or it became apparent that how good he was going to be, and then she entrusted him with more of a prominent dancing role or not. I don't know, but yeah, it's just mind blowing. Really, really mind blowing. How, I mean, of course he's an actor, and he's coming from that background, so I don't want to say take it for granted. His performance was very good in that regard as well. But just to echo what you guys said, he should, in theory, stand out like a sore thumb amongst that level of dancers. But
Yeah.
it really is not the case at all. I just don't know how he did that. And I've taught. I guess some of you have had some experience of teaching, let's say, amateurs or people with very little dance experience, and they did not look like that. I can promise. I can promise you.
I mean,
And I don't know. You just wonder if he's just because the piece is so personal about him, if he's channeling some sort of inner, I don't know,
Fire.
transcending experience that's making him move like that. Because maybe he wouldn't move like that if the piece was not so personal for him. I don't know, but
Yeah, no, that I wonder if he ever did have before some movement related training, sorry, or if it's like if he had any contact with movement before this piece, this work, or if it's which we know, no, we work with Eric and we know that he trains you in the best way possible to achieve what you the best you can. He is really, really, really good at it. That's also a talent that you have.
yeah.
Many people that decide to train after dancing or to teach have that talent, but I'm sorry to say some people don't have it, and you really
Mm,
see the difference, no? So
mm,
he definitely has it, and I wonder if, because I worked with her, but I guess she also has it, Crystal,
mm, mm,
because from what I hear, from what I gather from people that did work with her, she's also amazing. So I wonder what exactly is that
mm.
Jonathon was able to do this performance the way he performs.
Yeah. By the way, Saul, you sound much better
yes.
Yeah.
in this position.
Okay.
I don't know what the difference is, but you were super clear just now.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that before I wanted to mention this because we were talking. Max said, yeah, half an hour ago, about us working with Eric and how good he deconstructed the movement to make you understand everything. And there is something I just wanted to share that during the time we worked with Eric, I was just literally coming out of school, and it was literally like 3 4 months after I started to be a professional dancer. That you, when you come out of school, you don't start being a professional, you just get paid. But that's not being professional to me, and I know now after a few years. But the thing is that I liked it the way I worked, but I didn't fully understand everything that was happening, even though I consider myself someone somehow analytical with the movement and so. I didn't understand much, but it's a work that has hit me every time I go back to something that I don't understand in a movement. Every time I make a new piece, I mean I dance a new piece, I go back to thoughts that Eric gave me during that time that I didn't fully understand yet, but now I'm understanding better about movement and about qualities that you can bring with your body. And yeah, it was just a thought that I wanted to share because uh, there is something for young dancers, new dancers that are starting to be in places that are not their comfort zones on movement, and that maybe they don't understand well what they are doing yet. But if they are passionate enough to dance and they are how to say paying enough attention to listen and to absorb what someone that is older than you and that has much more knowledge than you is giving you, then at some point it's gonna hit you and you are gonna understand it. So like frustrations are gonna happen anyways. I was frustrated at some points during that process, but yeah, afterwards it's gonna be just something that is gonna keep with you the whole time, the whole career you have. And I don't even mean the whole career as a dancer. Afterwards, for sure, it's gonna stay with me. I cannot say yet because I'm still dancing as much as I am allowed. But at some point, I'm gonna notice also that knowledge that it came when I was just 20 years old, and it's growing with me. That knowledge.
I also have kept what I learned from my process with Eric, and I should mention Shannon was also there to help set the piece. But Eric was mostly teaching the classes in the morning and running a lot of the exercises, and I mean, I remember all of us being quite infatuated or obsessed with the process while it was happening. I remember talking about it outside of work a lot, meeting together to take notes and discuss it afterwards. So I know that it already had an impact on me at the time. But even now, when, like you said, when I have to deconstruct a movement or when I'm rethinking new movement of my own work or even teaching to explain movement to somebody else, I use a lot of the tools that I learned from that process. I mean, I have garnered a lot of other tools since then from other processes that left me with an impression, of course. But a lot of foundation is still left from a lot of what I learned from that time with Eric and the time learning Crystal's work.
And
Yeah, it was such a positive process in that way, and as in many others. No? But it was such a packed process for all of us, and for me particularly too. No, I still do also use a lot of these tools and things I learned this process, Eric and Sharon, work or creative processes or whatever work of that kind I'm involved in nowadays. And yeah, I wish I was in a better place at the we were working. I was in a moment in which I was processing a few too many. I wasn't all too happy, and I was keeping my busy a lot of the time. I didn't realize at the moment that later, way later. And yeah, in a way, it's a pity because I wonder if I could have been open or more. If I could have even known what I did, but nonetheless, I learned a lot. Really wonderful to have had that process, to have had that work with these.
Mal,
Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
your? I want you actually. I want you to talk about your process on what you learned and so, but also
Mhm.
to I think reconnect
If I
to
learned it.
if I learned anything, uh, but also to reconnect to the piece and maybe finish with that because we didn't speak at all about the music and only when we
Mm,
mentioned the tap dance that we said that it was an amazing background, but maybe
mm.
you can also
Go back towards the piece.
go
Mm.
back towards the piece and
Sure.
yeah
And we didn't actually speak about the choreography neither.
yeah
We only
yeah
spoke about I mean, we spoke about the dancing, but not actually the ins and outs of the choreography so much. But yeah,
I'll
I
be
mean, just to
right
talk.
back, guys. I'll be right back.
yeah yeah
Okay,
yeah
sure, sure.
yeah
Just to talk briefly about
was just gonna say that that's how good the piece is. That we have been like 1 hour and
Yeah, I know.
30 minutes or something like that, and we haven't spoken about the choreography.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Good.
We take it back.
We back up.
We back
Back up. Back up.
just back up.
Yeah, just I mean, just to add really briefly on the impact of the process, because we'd all talked a little bit about the process we'd had with Crystal Pite's piece. Yeah, I mean, it's more personal, just personal to me, but just to highlight the impact that it had on my own dancing career, it's completely transformed how I could move I mean, for me personally, and I was only really able to move in very compact and aggressive manner, or mostly, let's say. And then I wouldn't say the working with Eric and Sharon had like immediate effect. Of course, it takes time for that amount of information to sort of digest in the body, but after a while, I really felt how much of a difference that process made to how I understood movement and how I could perform movement, because it completely made me understand how to move in a more fluid way and how to use delay and not always moving as one block, which I could basically only do before that, and which was mostly the work of the house choreographer at the time, so to say. So it was kind of more suitable for that, but in order to do like other styles of work, it's really helped me a great deal, definitely. And yeah, just to move back towards the piece, yeah, I mean, Miguel said we should talk a bit about the music, and I also suggest we should talk a bit more about the choreography itself. And just one thing I wanted to talk about from the ladder there, I mean, because of course it's easy to look at a lot at the second act and how well it's all composed in the dance side, but one thing I noticed a lot this time was how well even those very, can I say, like small scale or basic scenes, how well they are like composed. Like for example, the parts where they're doing the sort of resuscitation, or where they're like in a close group and doing, and not even the movement, but how she composes the scene of like different levels and when people should move and not move and stuff. I don't know, that's just what I noticed a lot more watching it the second time, was these more like small scale choreographic elements that I thought were just so well done. Yeah, I don't know what you
I
guys thought
was
about that, or if you noticed that too.
talking again. I mentioned Jaitha because I watched the piece with her, and she knows a little bit about photography. Well, she says a little bit, but she knows about photography.
She
And
knows very much about
Yeah, she does know very much.
but she was even asking herself if Crystal did ever a workshop or something about photography, because she said that in every small pose that she was creating with this one person moves, the other one moves, the other one, and then only two, in every small pose there was a perfect alignment, like having
Yeah,
one person low, one person high, one
exactly.
coming more front to have the different perspectives. So somehow it was really well framed. The those scenes were really well framed. So she even wonders that, or if it's just a talent that Crystal has on how to make these scenes.
Mm.
I was gonna say, what was I gonna say? Yes.
You were gonna say, Saul, you're cutting.
I was. No, but I was gonna say that also something that I think it's worth talking about in the choreography is how much they use the same material, whether it was the steps themselves or the music or the text. They used it many times, like not only once and you forget it and it doesn't happen again. They used it many times, uh, sometimes giving exactly the same atmosphere and the same feeling, but sometimes giving a complete different. And I think that speaks really well on how to be creative with the material you have, with the material you make, and how to use the repetition to say something with that repetition, not only for the lack of time. And so you make choreography, you make 10 eights and you after that make a 30 minutes piece or something like that. uh, it's again really well thought how the repetitions were coming and how you could reconnect with an idea that you saw already in a different way, past a few minutes in the piece.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys,
I
if
loved,
you guys notice. I mean, for sure you noticed, but what you thought about it.
yeah, I loved how they reuse the section in the table on the
Yes.
table
Yes.
Mm.
from the first act, this first part. I love how they reused it on the second without the table,
Yeah.
without the
Mhm,
text,
mhm.
and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
There's definitely, I mean, like what Miguel's saying, like maybe this is a more choreographic discussion as choreographers and not from a dancer's perspective, but well, I think it's very intertwined. I think it's very both related. But there's, how much, no, well, we don't know, but you can just imagine how much time went into constructing this work, and that it was not, well, I'm sure every choreographer would always want to say, I wish I had more time, but I'm sure this is not a work that was like rushed out the door. This is a completed, crafted work, and I'm sure that use of repetition is not an excuse for lack of time to create more. It is like you said, a tool to test your creativity. Just in the same way that you can try the same movement over and over again to get it correct, or try it over and over again so that it starts to break apart, and then you can see what all the pieces of a particular movement are. Is the same in choreographic phrasing with what I saw, like that things are repeated so that they can then represent new things. You can change one small thing so that it can then lead in, that same repetition can lead into something else, or that something different ends exactly the same as a different scene and it can go back into another scene, and I was laughing because there are so many moments I was like, how did they come back to this formation? What the
Mm.
hell? Like,
How did they get there? No.
like
Yeah.
it looks so. It looks. I mean,
Mm.
maybe this is being critical of something else in the wrong reason, in the wrong way. But with Crystal's work being so popular, at least among contemporary dancers, and even among non-contemporary dancers now, many people have been inspired to make very similar work, or very work that is influenced by her. Whether because they work with her or because they saw a piece of hers, or like us because we did a piece of hers. It leaves an imprint on you, and many people try to replicate her material and her sensibility, and no one does it as well as her still. Like you just see somehow this ability between her, the talent of the dancers, their trust and knowledge that all fuses together to make something that is the choreography. It's very, yeah, I don't know. Like to be specific about a particular part I liked choreographically, in the first time I saw the show, the scene that I thought was the most unnecessary was the two women with the echoing chime.
The female duet, yeah.
This when I first saw the piece, I was like, this doesn't feel like it belongs in the piece. It feels like a very nice dance section, but it somehow feels unrelated to me. But somehow when I saw it yesterday, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like this is
Because
I don't know. Somehow it was so important for me then this time when I saw it.
in some level, you can connect it with the show part in which Jermaine, and Jonathon are doing the movement together. So in some abstract way, you can even connect it. But I think really, I know it's difficult to connect it, but I think it really just works because it's so well executed that it happens so many times with Crystal's work that when she does this intersection and then act two, it starts dance that for some other pieces it was not related to the act one, or not as related as this one, but it's just so well executed that for me it doesn't, I don't need to be pleased in every level of choreography to be happy. Sometimes it's just enough with a great composition of material, great execution, that they were both exactly to the same movement, and performing at the same time, not just being there and moving. You know, I think that's why it's enough. You know, even
I really like. I'm gonna finish up here. Don't hog the time. I really like that from a structural level. A lot of scenes are parallels to the first act. I mean, it's not the first time I've seen that from Crystal. In Tempest, it was quite similar. But in this piece, it seemed very flawless. Like every section in the first half doesn't feel disconnected from each other. They relate to each other. They have a narrative. And every part of the second half connects to each other, at least to me. But they overlap each other, and you can see where they match. The parts where they start from the, I mean, when the piece starts with Jonathon turning off the alarm on the pillar, and then the second section starts with Jonathon turning off the dancers with the pillar, and then the duet of Bryan and Cindy are from the first half is salsa. In the second half, you can see the elements of salsa structure and the way they were holding each other repeating themselves again, and it doesn't feel trite. It doesn't feel, at least to me, it doesn't feel gimmicky. And even then, how it blends into Jonathon and Jermaine's duet again, and they're whistling, and you know, like it somehow is poetic without seeming like cheesy.
Yeah. I think my also just reminded me, I think of my favorite part of this second act was this part where they're sort of dragging him from side to side across the stage with like different movements, different ways, but at the same time there are these fragments of the show dancing elements that are still there, and just somehow randomly some of them start doing bits of this sort of show dance that's echoed from the first part, but I don't know how. It's just so well blended together. I just don't know how is it possible to do that, but it's just, I don't know. I just was just smiling that whole part. It's just like amazing how you can have those two worlds coexisting so seamlessly at the same time. Choreographically speaking, anyway, it was just like amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and Max said a word that triggered me another thought: the cheesiness. Like you said, without being cheesy. Because something I realized, especially watching the second time, is the end. The very end of the piece, the solo of Jermaine, impeccable. We can say again many times, and also us knowing a show like that, how demanding it is to be 2 hours on the on a show, and then for the last 5 minutes to do a solo like that,
Where you're like jumping and running in the air.
yeah, and then turning and then turning again, and more and more and more, and still giving your. It's just too much to us.
It's so precise.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, like, I knew this solo was coming because I saw it before, and this time I somehow there was a small thought on me of, I know this is coming, and it's coming in a way that is very now I want the audience to feel this way, that we change the music, we put the piano music that is beautiful, we put a dancer very emotional on stage, uh, and I just want you to feel relieved after the whole aggression that was the piece, and so, and I was like, in many ways, this could go wrong. This could be done in a cheesy way, in a way that you feel at the end like, okay, so now, yeah, it's just the beautiful music to finish and make a smile on the audience, and that's it, everything is fine. But again, it was done with a delicacy and an artistry behind the layer of beautiful music and beautiful movements and emotional movements more than just beautiful, that yeah, it's always there in during the whole piece. There has been this second layer of thought that you can have while watching, that is just making it accepted, like many times I would find myself on a show having this type of classical music that is really beautiful, and having a dancer giving himself up and so, and I would be like, okay, again, because we have seen this scene many times in many pieces, but it's again really well executed, really well thought out. The movement again bring you to the whole piece. The small movements that happen when he is, I remember in the last solo, he seems like he's gonna fall, and then he starts just limping, and that can bring thoughts to your head of someone having a struggle to keep going with his life, with keep going with the solo. It's just choreographically, for me, that solo is yeah, a 10 out
Okay,
of 10.
I have to ask you guys something because in this moment, this two scenes, the second to last scene is Jonathon speaking a monologue to the audience, and the first time that he can put all the fragmented words from the show into one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
The accident happened, has happened. They are not here anymore. It happened to her, it happened to her, it happened to him. And that he does not have to intercut or doubt what he's going to say as he does in the rest of the piece. So this is like the first moment he can say with complete lucidity and clarity about his facing his own trauma. At least this is what I understood. At the very end, he says, and it's trying to reach. This is an attempt. This is an attempt to say. It doesn't say anything. Then he just says an attempt to say, and then he turns to Jermaine and says, "Leave him," and then goes off stage. So my two questions are, and then Jermaine has a solo after. So to me, to you guys, my question is, what was he attempting to say? Or was it anything specific he was attempting to say? And having this scene close the piece, what is Jermaine for you guys? What is Jermaine's character? Sorry.
He's Jermaine Guy in the show.
No, we were going so well. Now I have to cut. No,
You can keep it
I'm
in.
gonna keep this. I'm gonna keep this.
You can call the episode that or something.
Good question, Max.
Yeah, good question.
Good question. Maybe I don't know, but maybe I'm going. Yeah, I'm going with knowing a bit. I think I don't know, and I haven't thought enough about what does he want to say that he doesn't at the end. I can't come up with something right now. But about Jermaine, during the whole piece, he has been represented sometimes, not most times, as himself, as the main character, Jonathon. Um, but also being kind of the leader of the piece. So I think it can be just the biggest inspiration that he has achieved. What I was saying before, that the whole piece is about making a show, making an artwork. So he has gone to the point in which he doesn't have to explain. He can just show it. And this is what was going on in his mind the whole time. And now he gets to show it by making that beautiful solo. So I think it's just that having to a point in which he has achieved what he was looking for the whole time, to make the show, to make the work, to make the art happen.
So
So
like in a
that's my
way,
take.
like you think Jermaine represents like the perfect product that you don't need to adjust anymore.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. The main muse, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. There was part of me, although of course I enjoyed the ending and all of the last part, the last text and the last solo, but there was part of me that wanted the piece to finish the moment when, I think it's after that scene I was talking about before, when he's been dragged to side to side and then he ends up like on the floor with all the dancers sort of supporting him, and he's being like sort of mothered by one of the female dancers. I don't know. I just love that image so much, and like the dancers are just sort of like looking at each other slowly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I almost just wanted it to like spend a long time there and just like finish there somehow, because it was such a. It was, the image was so strong and it said so much for me about having that support network around him. Like he just woken up from this trauma and he's finally realizing he's there and he has people around him to help him. I don't know. For me, that was just such a strong image. You could just like, as I said, spend a long time, just finish there. Having said that, though, yeah, I don't know. I don't. I'm not going to talk about what I think Jermaine represents overall, but for me, I don't know. The last solo was something about I don't know, trying to just stand on solid ground again, trying to be able to walk forwards, trying to be able to feel normal again. Like I don't know how he just walks at the end and how he was doing those movements with like sort of grabbing his own legs and so trying to feel solid and human in a human body again. For me, he was just sort of the physical representation of what Jonathon had just said before, basically, like sort of coming to terms with things and being able to stand up properly.
Yeah, it's where the fact that
Oh,
the
that's good.
fact that
Sorry,
yeah, the fact that Jermaine is the one that gets to do that solo, or that represents that solo at the end, yeah, shows me, or has the meaning to me, that Jonathon really accepted the problem or the trauma, sort of learned that to live on, know how learn or know how to live with it and go on living.
Yeah.
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 I could be wrong, but I thought the piano music at the end was the was a piano rendition of the song that he sang at the end of the first act. I could be wrong, but I thought it
Is
was,
it?
if not very similar, but I thought it was the same song in a different, slightly different version. But I could be wrong.
I didn't
I mean,
Could
recognize
be,
it.
didn't realize.
I think the chords. I think the chords are from the first song, but
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
what I
think
thought as well.
any of the melodies are. It's just the chords are, I think, correct. From one to the same one from
Yeah,
by getting high.
yeah.
Before I forget, because before I should have done this before, but to mention the dancers, because we have spoken like one word here, one word there, but just to say the cast, that they were all amazing, and especially when we saw them live, that afterwards we had the chance to speak with them, um, with some of them at least. It was their 50th show, and they were completely committed to the show, giving everything. I haven't done 50 times a show ever, and I imagine how hard it can be if you are not inspired. But I guess this show can be really inspiring. Blah, blah, blah. So just to say the names, how they are written here. Brian Arias, David Raymond, Cindy Salgado, Jermaine Spivey, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Tiffany Tregarthen, Jonathon Young, Haley Heck Thorne. Wow, that was hard. Next time somebody else does it.
Get native. Yeah, it's. I think it's good to mention them for sure. I mean, we have to. We should be. For me, I just to close on what I thought about Jermaine and his solo and the ending. I think we're all on very similar wavelengths, or like I feel echoes of what I feel in like little bits of what you guys say too. Like it's definitely Jermaine is representing a sense of closure on his trauma about moving onwards or rebuilding or accepting. Man, my vocabulary is not so good. But one thing I felt is that this scene is like a bookend on his relationship to Jermaine. What I took away from it was that Jermaine only exists when Jonathon needs him to exist. That when he needs the high, then Jermaine is there. That when he needs to feel wanted, Jermaine is there. When he needs someone to bounce his self-validation, Jermaine is there. And in a way, Jermaine also needs Jonathon to exist. If Jonathon is not in that state, Jermaine doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And the whole show, there's so many moments where Jonathon is tempted or provoked into his pit of self-hate and self-indulgence and guilt that to me, even if all the voices are Jonathon, he did all the voiceovers, no one else says anything for the whole show, but to me, somehow, like Saul said, Jermaine represents being the ringleader of all these demons, to put it in a different word. And to me, all the times that someone told him he should go back to using, or that phone call where they're like, yeah, come on over, we need you, this kind of thing, and the co-host is the show, and then when they switch and Jermaine becomes the main host and Jonathon becomes the midget co-host, like, to me, Jermaine only exists when Jonathon hates himself. And to me, maybe this is very parallel to how I feel with my own problems or my own self-reflection on the piece, but when he could accept the resolution of the piece, the resolution of the trauma at the very end. For me, the reason he says don't touch him is like, you don't need to touch him to prove he's there. He doesn't need to exist anymore, to me. And at the same time then that Jermaine has that solo, it's very beautiful because it's also like, oh, I can move on and not have to be on stage. I don't have to be here anymore, And I don't know, it's very, I guess it's a bit like schizophrenic, but to me, this is what Jermaine was like to me.
Yeah. So, what do you think, guys, about stopping today's podcast here?
Yeah, so it's been a long.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much to discuss. Could go on for hours.
We can watch it again and do the second podcast for it.
Maybe next season.
I'm a bit bummed we didn't get to talk about Owen's wonderful music as always, or the singing.
Yeah, for sure.
Singing.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to talk about Owen Belton, Alessandro Juliani, and Meg Rowe. It says here,
The musicians,
it's in
yes.
French composition, like sound composition, and so.
Mhm.
But and we didn't talk about the puppet and how well it was used to the piece. Like, Guys, if you're watching this, watch the piece too. Like, don't spend 2 hours with us and don't spend 2 hours watching Crystal Pite's work. It's amazing. Watch it.
Yeah, I was thinking we could get sponsorship from Marquee TV if you say, yeah, and don't forget to catch this on Marquee TV by signing up to the
Yeah,
free trial or whatever.
Now that we have 100,000 viewers, we can do it.
Sponsor stream.
So yeah,
No, but
definitely,
something-
guys. Like we have been talking for almost 2 hours about this piece, and we almost haven't said anything negative about it. So imagine how fucking good it is.
This is what
Yeah.
what one of the other things I thought was a shame about this time that we took so long. There's so much to talk about. It was hard. We didn't get to. Not that I want to jab the piece, but like I want to be critical also. I don't want to just be like it's amazing. It's it is amazing.
It's fine. With this one, I don't care. I'm gonna be critical with everything, and with this one, I'm being critical, but just for the positive things that it has. I think we were not just saying, "Wow, so good," and that's it. We were being analytical and critical, but it's just who are we?
I read the Guardian review just after watching it, just to I don't know, I was just curious what the critics wrote about it, and I mean the Guardian gave it like 4 out of 5 stars, but I always feel it's like they have to say something. They're like forced to say like one bad thing they don't like. It's like part of their roles somehow. Like they just have to say it. So like, nothing can be 5 stars and perfect. Yeah, I think he said something about his I've forgotten the name of the reviewer, but his one criticism was something about the sort of freaky clowns being a little bit cliche in terms of I don't know, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something about that, about the clowns being too cliche for like a sort of like Joker style, like bad clown or something like that.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what he said, but
I mean, I was gonna say something we didn't talk about either was the makeup, that it was also amazing and also bringing you into the whole piece. Like, okay, sorry, I'm just I'm too passionate about this piece, I guess.
Yeah, and even when he comes back with like half his makeup, it's still so effective somehow. Like I don't know, I don't know.
But I think we can finish the podcast here. I was just gonna translate the word because it's Betroffenheit. And in English, my English is not that, my German is not that good, but in the translation it says consternation. Am I wrong?
There is no good English translation for Betroffenheit.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like like consternation is like when you're in deep thought, or even like negative deep thought, similar to agony, but it's not exactly that. And also yesterday, do you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, just because everything is frozen on my screen. Just because like also we translated it to the Japanese as well, and we can find the exact good meaning.
Okay, so thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Same time next week, or let's just say that for now. We can always.
Yeah, more or less Tuesday. If it's Monday, it's fine. If it's Wednesday, it's fine. Yeah.
Wait. Peace out, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Subscribe.
I don't know how to leave this. Oh, here. Wait.
Like. Don't forget to follow me. Follow me home.
Don't follow me.
All right, let's see how this recording thing works.